Badger fans, we're going to tell you how this team beats Bama. Let's get positive. It's Bama week. Fire up. Let's go on Wisconsin.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers. I'm your host, Ryan Herrings. This is your team every single day. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, appreciate the heck out of every single person that does it. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, customers if you bet $5, you get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket, YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And we're jumping right into this one. This is a show I wanted to do. I'm excited for it. I wanted to do an optimistic show because, A, it's Bama week. Let's beat that mid-program from the SEC. They don't have anymore. So to do this, listen, if I'm going to do an optimism show, who am I going to get from the Rolodex? I'm going to get the Oppenheimer of optimism, the Pope of positivity himself. We are going to get that dude on the show, Rajiv on the show, and we're going to talk why you can find reasons to be optimistic. I don't want this show. This is not going to be a hyperbole show. Like we're going to tell you Wisconsin's going to win, but we're going to tell you some reasons why you can find optimism heading into this game. We're going to tell you big picture reasons for optimism. And then we're going to talk a little moral victories at the end and just dive into that idea. But Rajiv, welcome to the show. Let's talk positivity. What are some reasons that you're optimistic or you can find optimism heading into this game?
First of all, I love that we're doing a positivity show because this is a game I've been waiting for years. This is a game that like every Badger fan circled. You know, you look at future schedules, you're like, ooh, Bama's coming to Madison. Like that's a cool thing. So let's just start with how about we just get excited about that? We've been talking so much about the game and who's going to win and how we probably aren't picking a win, but like let's be excited about it. This is not something that happens very often. Alabama's coming to Madison. We go to Tuscaloosa next year. That's really cool. Remember those games against LSU? Remember the 15 game against Alabama, which yikes for that one. But like that LSU game at Lambeau Field was awesome. And there was so much excitement about playing an SEC team. We've measured up well against the SEC in bowl games historically. Like there's a lot of excitement to go into just off the bat. But yeah, you got to find something in the game. And I think I have found the thing in the game that I'm just really excited about. And it's kind of a compilation of things that have happened this week. You did a great show with the Locked On Bama guy, and you've been sharing some stuff with us about that and other things that you've read and things that I've read. If there is, and I'm not saying there is a weakness on Bama's team, but if there is a weakness, the offensive line could be one of them. The other potential weakness is an inexperienced secondary. So my thinking is this. Our best unit on the defense is our secondary. I think that's pretty clear. And our weakest unit on the defense is our defensive line. So in my opinion, let's put the pressure on those cornerbacks, and let's put the pressure up front on potentially a weak point of Alabama's offense. Let's blitz them. Let's not bring 4. Let's bring 5. Let's bring 6. Let's have occasions where we bring more. Let's really test that Alabama offensive line. Milroe's good. Yes, we know that. And then when he does throw it over the top, if he can get out of there, we trust the best part of our defense, the part of the defense that we know coming into the season was going to be strong. They've shown to be strong already, and they're going to be strong for the rest of the year. That's number one right off the bat. I just feel like that has to be something that we can look at because there's not a lot of weaknesses with Alabama. But if you're going to beat them, you got to find and exploit that weakness. And if that can be exploited through blitzing and utilizing the strength that we have, that gives me a reason to actually think that, hey, we stand a chance.
Yeah, I love that. I have parts of that too. And I want to hit on the first thing you said because I think it's so perfect, man. It's Bama week. I feel like so many Badger fans, and listen, I think we partially contributed to that with a little bit of the post-game concerns. And by the way, those concerns are still valid. Like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you Wisconsin's look great through 2 weeks, but I feel like Badger fans are kind of walking around to some degree, some of them with an umbrella over their head, right? Like, Bama's coming, but they're probably going to crush us. Listen, everybody outside of Madison expects Bama to come in and roll us anyway. So who cares? Like, shoot your shot, man. You got Bama coming into Camp Randall. Fire up, get excited, bring the noise, enjoy it. Because I've been a college football fan probably about the same amount of time as you have. I've never seen our Bama come into Camp Randall. Like, this is a once in a lifetime potential thing. Maybe we'll host a playoff game sometime and that'll happen. But like, oh man, enjoy it. Fire up. And if you lose, you lose. People expect it to happen anyway. You get the opportunity to take on Tyson in the ring, land a blow and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I really want everyone that's listening to this that's going to the game. I wish I was going to the game. I'm not, but I just feel like get that place electrified, man. I know it's an 11 o'clock kick, which is never the most exciting thing for atmosphere, but you know what? Bama's coming to town. So anyone listening to this, tell your friends, get there, whoever's around you. I want that place louder than it's ever been because you need that. Like the players can feed off of that electricity in the atmosphere and the passion of the fans. And Luke Fickell said in his press conference this week that this is one of the most exciting things about college football. It's the pageantry, it's the rivalries, and it's games like this. SEC powerhouse coming into Madison, a huge stadium, a stadium that people talk about all over the country for jump around and everything. Like, let's give these guys a game. Let's make it something powerful because remember, these kids, they're 18, 19, 20, 21 years old. They feed off that energy. This is what they've been waiting for their whole lives. So let's help them out and push them on, man.
Yeah, I love it. Let me give you a couple other reasons why I think I want to frame the show as there are things you can find. There are ways you can see this going well for Wisconsin. It's not necessarily a prediction, but this is not the same Bama team. So Bama is last in the SEC in penalties per game, last in the SEC in penalty yards per game, both by a pretty clear margin. They're 14th in the SEC in turnover margin. So you're talking about a team who's played 2 games at home against inferior competition, and they're still quite a ways down in turnover margin. They're dead last in penalties, dead last in penalty yardage. They're 9th in the SEC in sacks allowed, 7th in the SEC in third down conversions, which again speaks to that offensive line that you mentioned, the sacks allowed and the third down conversions, because they're getting pressure. If you look at that USF game, that South Florida game, South Florida had receivers running open. They had guys, they had chances. I listened to Josh Pate the other day, and he said South Florida probably wins that game with an accurate quarterback. So
yeah, he did have 2.9 yards an attempt, which is not very good.
Yeah, it's very Van Dyke-ish. But that's the other one. That's the other one I want to get into. Van Dyke is a wild card in this game, and you brought him here to unleash some arm talent that can beat elite teams, right? He's done it to a degree in his career at times against really good secondaries. We know he has that type of arm talent. I think when you look at an inexperienced secondary on their side, an offensive line that hasn't been very good, and they're getting some pieces back. Caden Proctor, their tackle, should be back. Worth noting, that'll be the first game action he's had this year. Dude, I mean, again, like there's scenarios you can look at here where you probably don't want your first game action coming off injury to be on the road against a pretty good team. So I look at some of that sloppiness, the offensive line you mentioned, inexperience in their secondary, and the fact that we have a quarterback when he's right that can punish good teams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And behind that quarterback, we have a running back room where someone else can shine every week. I'm not saying that we have a superstar in that room right now, but we've had weeks where Ches shines. We have weeks where Cade Yakimelli shined last week. We know that Tawi Walker has that ability. And I mean, so there's a lot of people back there that if they do ride the hot hand, as Phil Longo has said this week and Luke Fickell has said, like that's going to be something. It might not be the guy that we expect, right? We didn't expect Cade Yakimelli to go off last week, but anything can happen back there. You've got the talent behind Tyler Van Dyke to do that. And you've got now an experienced receiver group, right? Will Pauling is definitely going to have his way against some of those inexperienced secondary that Alabama has. We've got receivers on the outside that are getting more into it. And frankly, reading between the lines a little this week, I feel like, we've been talking about whether or not they've been holding things back. It kind of seems like maybe they have been a little bit. They were really kind of tailoring the offense to win the game. They weren't really necessarily trying to put up 50, 60 points. I'm not saying they wouldn't have if they had the opportunity, but it does appear like maybe they were holding some things back. So let's see. Maybe we do see plays we've never seen before. I mean, we saw two flea flickers last week. You didn't expect that. So what new wrinkles are there this week, right? You have to expect that from the time the schedule came out, from the time seeing this game at the end of last year, they've been looking at this game like, okay, what kind of things can we install into the game plan for Alabama that we're not going to put in for the first 2 weeks? There's something out there. Yes, I know we were in some tough situations, but I'm not saying that it's going to be a whole new playbook, but there's definitely things we haven't seen that we're going to see, and hopefully they work.
Yeah, and to your point, tough situations. Bama was in a fourth quarter battle with South Florida. And then the wheels kind of came off in Bama, but that was a situation in Bryant-Denny where they were pushed to their limits to some degree. And this is no disrespect to Bama. I'm sure there's going to be a Bama fan or two that watches this, rails. Bama's a great program. They're a more talented program top to bottom. The more talented program doesn't always win. I mean,
if Northern Illinois can go and beat Notre Dame, we can beat Alabama. Is it going to happen? Probably not. But can it happen? You better believe it can.
Yeah, damn straight. You better believe it can. All right, we're going to take a quick break for our friends of the show. We're going to come back. I got some comments. I asked people, what are you optimistic about? We're going to throw those up. Plus, big picture optimism going forward for the Luke Fickell era. We're going to get into that next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show over at Factor Meals. Y'all, like, if you've listened to this show for a while, you know I am hopeless in the kitchen. Like, it doesn't even the other day I was trying to make a sandwich and we have pepper jack, which is my favorite cheese. I love pepper jack, I love provolone, but it's a block of it. It's not sliced. And I'm like, babe, what do I do? She's like, just cut it into slices. I'm like, I can't do that. This is unbelievable.
Your wife is a saint, by the way. Your wife is a saint.
She's a real one for putting up to me. She's like, you want me to slice it for you? I'm like, sure. So Factor Meals is here for people like me who are hopeless in the kitchen, healthy, fast, quick. Fire up your health journey if that's what you want, or just make it a little easier to prep, cook, clean. Factor Meals is incredible. Over 35 different meals, 60 different options you can add. New flavors all the time to explore. Head over to factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50. Use code LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first order, plus 20% off your next month while the subscription is active. Today's episode is also brought to you by our great friends over at FanDuel. Listen, I'm an NFL guy. Rajiv's an NFL guy. We both love looking at lines and getting in on the action. So, I mean, this FanDuel is right up our alley. I always say do it responsibly, but FanDuel is fast. It's simple. It's easy. The user interface is incredible. And right now, there's a great offer. Right now, if you bet $5 through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers get 3 weeks of a free trial of NFL Sunday tickets. So you can see all the out-of-market games. You can watch the Colts. Watch JT run. Like, you can do all of that with FanDuel and this great offer we have for you. Visit FanDuel.com. Download America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel.com. It is the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network for a reason. They are incredible. Go visit FanDuel.com. All right, let's get back into our Optimism show. And I am so grateful to have Rajiv here on it and grateful to have everybody else in here on it. I'm going to throw up some of these comments, Rajiv. This is from Badger Bias. Our corners outclass their receivers. I don't care what anyone says. Milroe has been suspect in the intermediate passing game. Our run game is potentially pretty good. I also think our outside linebackers will dominate their offensive tackles, speaking to that offensive line. And we might take some more shots. That's from Badger Bias. Anything there?
Well, I like this one because he put in there a note about Tackett Curtis as well. Curtis looked good. And that, talk about a reason for optimism, the youth, right? I mean, Tackett Curtis came out last week and was like, all right, I'm here to play. He looks like he's going to he looks like he's trying his hardest to keep that starting job. You know, it's like, oh, second half, you're Cheney, you're available. Just hold on. I'm going to play. Like, he's out there to win that job. He came to Madison to do that, to win that job. And he went to USC to play in games like this. He came to Madison to play in games like this. That guy looks like he could. I told you last week, I said, that's a guy that I feel like is a star in the making in that room, that a lot of room to grow, a lot of need for growth. But he's a guy that can make that happen. And I don't know about our outside linebackers dominating their offensive tackles, but you bring the right pressures, you bring the right defensive schemes, and you mix things up. Yeah, I think we are going to get pressure on Milroe, and which is going to surprise a lot of people, given the fact that we haven't really done that. But it's got to be schemed up, and you got to put our guys in the best position to make it happen.
The biggest thing I'll add on to it, the Milroe pressure, because I do think they can get into the backfield. We've seen it with Alabama this first couple games. Their offensive line hasn't looked great in pass protection. You got to contain Milroe. That's the one thing I'd say. You got to be super careful about creating running lanes for this. These are the type of quarterbacks that make you rip your hair out, right? You get pressure.
Cam Ward last year, yeah.
Justin Fields against us, Braxton Miller, or really just fill in your Ohio State quarterback. These are the guys that make you rip your hair out, but go ahead.
But I will say, Ryan, like that, you're right. That's going to happen. He is going to, on a 3rd and 8, he is going to scramble out of there. We're blitzing. He is going to get that first down. That's going to happen. But the last thing that I wrote down for the reasons for optimism was bend, but don't break defense. We've kind of showed that we can do that. Like we are going to take those hits. If anyone thinks we're not going to take hits from Alabama, they're coming, right? They're going to have big plays. We've just got to keep them out of the end zone. That's really in between the 20s. They're going to eat a little bit, but we've shown that. Right. I mean, the drive, other than that drive last week, that was a horrific drive to start the third quarter. Other than that, the defense hasn't given much up this year. Now, I know they haven't played Alabama's type offenses, but and that goes back to last year, right? Where we would start a game, give up a lot on the ground. And then all of a sudden, as the game went on, the teams didn't score. It was really what they got in the first half that they got. So there is some reason for optimism on that as well. Milroe's going to make those plays. We just got to keep him out of the end zone.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Yeah, because if you're giving up an 8-yard scramble, like you said, you're not giving up the rushing attack, or you're not giving up those deep bombs. That Miller is actually a really good deep ball passer.
Yeah.
That's when people say he struggles a little bit intermediate. That's been proven to be true. I think he struggles a little bit reading coverages, but if he's got a one-on-one on the outside, like he throws a really nice deep ball. Evan says positive. They sell beer in the stadium, so no matter what, progress is made this season.
Let's go, Varsity Ale, baby.
I love it, man. That's a great comment from Evan. Bree says Badgers won't lose. It's just too. They just can't. It's too big of a game.
I like that. I like that because it's like, and as I've said before, I have this like home field advantage. I know that it's not always what it amounts to be, but I think there is something special like that. I just feel like, yeah, we should win this game because they're coming to our house. Like they're coming to Camp Randall. Tuscaloosa next year, that's a different story. But right now, like this is the best chance we're going to have a beating Alabama. This is, if we could pick a place to play them, it's going to be here, right? So let's see what happens.
I like this comment too for the reason of I don't know if she meant to, Bree, and I don't know if it's a guy or girl. But I don't know if this commenter meant to say it's too big of a game with the implication of this game does mean more to Wisconsin than Bama. Bama's got Georgia on the horizon. I mean, Wisconsin's got USC. Fine, USC Wisconsin is not Bama Georgia. Bama Georgia has basically decided the SEC for years now. Bama has Georgia on the horizon, and they're coming up to Madison. Wisconsin is not on their tier, and they know it. Players know it. Players read that stuff. They know Georgia's coming up. I think her point is corrected. This is a bigger game for Wisconsin, and that can matter, right? You can land that first punch. This one from Lake House said, yeah, he basically says the same thing. Bama has UGA on the horizon. They aren't going to come into a noon game against a lower tier team and play like Wisconsin will play, defending their home turf. I think that's generally true.
Absolutely. And you play like defending your home turf. You think about all the guys on the roster, right? You think about everyone who they all knew this game was coming up. They looked at the schedule last year, the year before. They knew this was coming. Like, and maybe the players didn't get up as much for those first two games as they should have. But they're going to be up for this game. So Bama is going to get our best shot. Yeah. And what happens. But again, look at Northern Illinois, look at Iowa State, look at teams last week that, we were a little upset after a win, but we still got the W. I'll take the W any day over an L. So, I mean, anything can happen. It's not written that this game is a loss.
100% agree. All right, let's talk a little shift over to bigger picture optimism program. I'll give you my first one. I think you're seeing some of the young pieces. Like, there's been a lot of optimism with recruiting. We're seeing those pieces already start to trickle into the roster. Xavier Lucas, Kevin Haywood, right? Christian Allegro. You saw in the portal, Tackett Curtis, you mentioned, the young player, still a pretty young player coming over that they identified, right? You're seeing some really interesting young pieces that are probably way ahead of the curve. Dylan Johnson is playing. Emerson Mandel's been in the 2 deep, right? You saw both freshman running backs last year. To me, when it's validating to be excited about the recruiting, and then you see them starting to be, before they probably should be, already finding time onto the football field.
And along those same lines, if you look at those recruits, the thing that excites me about the program is the new level of athleticism that we're bringing in. I mean, there's clearly a type of player that Luke Fickell's after, and he's about changing the level of athleticism that this program has historically got. So, and yeah, you're like you just said, all those guys are seeing game time right now. That's because they're going after a different kind of guy. There's risk involved when you go after a different kind of guy. There's a risk involved when you change the offensive style and all these things. But I like the risk because the risk is where the reward comes from, right? And you can look at maybe we were in a situation before where there was a little bit of a higher floor, but I want the higher ceiling too. And I feel like that's the recruits that he's bringing in, the style of football that he's trying to do, the culture he's bringing. It's all about trying to win championships. He's been very consistent about that. And the athleticism has been a cornerstone of all the recruits that he's bringing in. And I love that.
Yeah, that's really well said. And I think you look back at last year, first year, still won 7 games, got to a bowl game. This year, they're 2-0 so far. I think you can get a combination of that higher ceiling with the recruiting staff, at least towards from where we're going from the end of the Paul Chryst era, and you still maintain that level floor, right? I think you're getting some of potentially both of that when you look at the recruiting and you look at the type of foundation that I think Fickell's a builder. I think he's a program builder. I think he has re-energized a lot of parts of the program that were starting to get stale, from strength and conditioning to fundraising to meeting with alumni to donor events. Like, that stuff had started to die on the vine. And Fickell's re-energized that. And I think we jumped the gun a little bit on how quickly this thing needs to happen. But all that foundational work, I feel really good about. And I think if you have a strong foundation, the other pieces start to fall into place.
Yeah, I mean, it's a development, right? It's a rebuild. It's an entire culture rebuild. So it does take time. And listen, we're guilty of it more than anybody. Like we're like, let's go. We're gonna win, 9, 10 games. But it's about making progress. It's about seeing the future and being able to see that kind of going. And I'm glad you said that about energized. I wrote down energized and modernized. That's what he's really doing. Like you're so right about the strength and conditioning and everything with Varsity Collective and the Camp Randall Club and all these things. It's really just about modernizing the program, because if you're going to continue to get these recruits like the 24 class and the athletes and all these guys, and you're really trying to build a championship team, you have to have a championship culture, championship program, championship department. Everything has to be aligned from the top down. And that was the message that Chris McIntosh sent when he hired Luke Fickell, was that we're going to change his culture because we're trying to win championships. He did, by the way, he did the same thing with the hockey team. So, I mean, like, I just feel like it's not just Luke Fickell. You can see the entire athletic department beginning to modernize and get energized. And that gives me, regardless of what happens this weekend or regardless of what happens this season, that gives me a ton of optimism about where the Wisconsin athletic department sits 5 years from now.
That's well said. Really well said. I'm gonna finish up with this comment, then we're getting to our last section. Somebody sent me this one. It is, here we go. I almost did up. The SEC is mid, Saban is gone.
Let's hope that's right.
There we go. That's a great one to head into our next break for. We're going to take one more quick break for our friends of the show. Get back into the idea of a moral victory. If Wisconsin does lose a close, tough game, should Badger fans be excited about that? I think it's an interesting discussion. We're going to hit that next on Locked On Badgers. First, a quick break for our friends of the show over at LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the #1 spot for all your professional marketing. If you got to hire people, if you got to find the right talent, we talk about this all the time. College football is a recruiting thing, right? They should use LinkedIn to find a 4-star defensive end. If you need to make a hire for your automotive job, you need a receptionist, go find that 5-star receptionist. That's going to be over on LinkedIn. They have screening tools, get rid of all the people who have no business walking in your door. So it saves them time. It saves you time. Time is money. You hire the right people the first time, less wasted space. LinkedIn is something my company's used. It's something I've used. That's why small businesses continue to rank LinkedIn #1 among leading competitors. LinkedIn helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. All right, Rajiv, let's talk the concept of moral victories here, which I kind of hate using that term because it has such a negative connotation. And I already know people are going to say moral victories are for suckers, for losers. What if I rephrase it as progress, right? What if I rephrase that as you played really well against a team that has more talent, and that's a sign of continued progress in the program? What do you think about the idea of should Badger fans be good with, I'm not saying excited, but good with a close loss?
Yeah. So, and I think in about 90% of the situations out there, I would say no. Yeah, it's not a good thing. However, in this particular situation, yeah, I understand. I think there's some value to a moral victory against Alabama for a couple reasons. One, it's Alabama. Like that's not an easy thing to do. I don't care who you are. Like very few teams in the last 20 years have beaten this team. Like there's not a long list of teams that have actually gotten this done. So there's that. And the other thing is we've got a tough schedule. This is just the first of many games.
Mm-hmm.
So I want these players to have the confidence that they can actually go out and play this schedule and get some wins against teams they shouldn't. We've said many times that, they are probably going to beat a team that they shouldn't. And it might not be Bama, but if you have a close loss, something you lose by 7 or something, it's a tight game, you were in it till the end. Yeah, it's going to suck. It's going to be a horrible day when you lose that game. But now all of a sudden you play USC, you play Penn State, you play Iowa, you play Nebraska, you play teams you're like, okay, these guys are good. Hey, we hung with Alabama. We know we can compete against the best teams in the country. And that, excuse me, has a ton of value. It's not even about moral victory. It's about value for the season and what that can actually turn into. So, yeah, I mean, most cases I would say no, but in this case, honestly, I would say yes. I think there is some real value in moral victory because this season is long. We are still in week 3 of a 12-game season.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I want to be consistent on something. I've said one of my big goals for this year is to compete with the good teams, right? To show like you are not outclassed. Where for a while now, Wisconsin has gone into some big games, and it felt like even last year's Ohio State game aside, if you were to line up the last 5 or 6 really big games for Wisconsin, 3 or 4 of them you probably just lay an egg in. Where some of those Ohio State games, for example. The other reason I think this is important is this is a national spotlight game. This is not exactly the most loaded college football slate. Big noon kickoff is in Madison. Listen, where do the eyes of the nation go if this is a 24-27 game in the fourth quarter? They go to Madison. People are going to watch. This is a proof of concept thing, right? If you show that this is a competitive team and you can stand up against Bama again, and Bama's better, but if you can show that you're competing, that's progress. But the rest of the nation's going to watch. They're going to see the product. They're going to see Madison. They're going to see Camp Randall. Recruits will notice that, right? Like there's kids coming to campus this weekend, big time talent. You don't want to go there and then they show up and it's 42-10. Ugh, right? And then the atmosphere sucks. And then people are turning off the TV. And then nationally, it's same old Wisconsin. Like, I think it's a proof of concept thing. And that's why I do think a moral victory. Again, it sounds dirty saying it, but I agree with you. I think it shows progress, and I think it shows it on a national stage.
Yeah, I mean, if you remember last year when we played Ohio State, we were at that game, and you and I did a reaction show very late at night from our respective hotel rooms, and we talked about how I was feeling pretty good. I mean, yeah, we lost to Ohio State, but we were in the game going into the fourth quarter. It was close. We had excitement. There were moments, and that means something. And I think that energized a lot of people into thinking, okay, like whatever, this is progress. Like we didn't get blown out by Ohio State. So yeah, like anytime you can see progress and you can see sort of things moving into the future, it's going to be exciting. It's going to sting if we lose this game, but if it's really close and if we're tight and boy, we played our butts off and we competed with Alabama, it will hurt in the moment. But I'm telling you, weeks from now, we're going to look back and be really happy about that because it will make a statement about where this program is. They've said all week, this is a barometer game, and it is. Like, this is going to tell you where you are. If you're 50 points down from a team like Alabama, or you're beating a team like Alabama, or you're within 10 points of them, it's a barometer, and it can really set things up for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I like the term barometer because we need some hard facts too, right? As fans, this is a truth game. Like you said, it's a barometer game. We'll be able to come out of this and say, okay, one way or the other, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, we're actually kind of on the right track here, and it feels pretty good. Or like, okay, we need beer.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, we could redo our whole prediction thing after this week because we can really see it. And hey, maybe it's a 6-6 thing, or maybe it's 11-1. You just never know.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. Rajiv, this has been a great show again. I was excited to get I called him the Oppenheimer of Optimism. I think that's
great. That was very well thought of.
Yeah, I might add that, maybe make a new intro, but I think this was a good show because one of the things I talked about before the show, I don't want to lose the excitement. The first 2 games, again, I get it. They didn't meet quite what we were hoping for. I don't want to lose the excitement of being a fan in the middle of the season. You don't get a lot of games, man. And I feel like some Badger fans are just kind of like, head down in the bunker, and they're like, I don't know, man. You got Bama coming to town. I started with this. I'm going to wrap up with it. You got Bama coming to town. This is why you're a fan. Let's go.
And give it your all, right? Like we did a show with Justin there at 3 Big Things, and I was talking about how like one of the things was go big or go home. Like this is it, right? Like you've got to lay it out there because you got nothing to lose. Bama's coming there. Most people are picking a loss. We picked a loss. Like it's just. You have nothing to lose. Go out there and give it your all. Blitz the quarterback, play the young guys, and go big or go home. Those are the 3 things that we said. And I just feel like if we're gonna do this, you can't do it without taking your shot. So let's take our shot. And if we shoot and we miss, so be it. We expected to miss anyway. But if we don't go out there and give it our all, and the fans give it their all, people in the stadium, everyone puts in their thing and their time, their effort into it. Like who knows what can happen? And I'm there for it because. If they do win, boy, I tell you, this reaction show is going to be legendary.
Yeah, I'll say it right now.
So be it, and you know what? We might not have a chance to be excited after the game, so let's be excited now.
Yeah, I'll say right now, man. If we win, that reaction show is going for hours. I'll just stay on the stream. People can pop in and pop out. It's awesome. And Rajiv mentioned it. Go check out the Bucky Report. That's the show he does with Justin. Both really good dudes. Obviously, we're all kind of friends in the same group there. Go check out their show. With that, we'll wrap it up on Wisconsin. Thank you so much for tuning in. Optimism show Let's go beat that mid Bama team. Saban's not there. Wrap it up. Let's go.